We have a speaker today, which is Libby. She's already here, and she's going to tell us about a very interesting initiative from the Citizen Science Global Partnership, which is about upscaling air quality measurements or projects. So that sounds very interesting to us, Libby. We are all very keen on hearing what you're planning.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. But it's not just me. We have Jonas, who is working with me from the University of Antwerp. So he'll be presenting as well. We'll sort of share the presentation because we bring different things to the initiative. But,
oh, perfect.
Before we give our presentation and talk to you, could you tell us a little bit about the ECSA Air Quality Working Group in terms of what you're doing at the moment?
Yes, of course. Well, ECSA perhaps is the first thing I should explain. ECSA is the European Citizen Science Association, and this is an organization for all citizen science initiatives in Europe.
Yeah,
whether
I'm a member of ECSA, come to the conferences, so I know ECSA very well, but I just don't know the working group.
Yeah, so the working group was started when we were at one of the first conferences of ECSA, and all the people in air quality started to gather around one market stand, and we were all putting our materials there, and then we were talking with a couple of people, also me and Nuria Castel. We were saying, okay, tonight we can present new ideas for working groups. So why don't we start one? Also, Linda Carton was there. So we started a working group, and we have been sort of searching for what would be the best way of working together and exchanging information and things like that. So, and in Corona times, we started doing online meetings because that was pretty much the only thing you could do. And we sort of realized that a lot of people were just interested in what is going on in other places. So we decided to have these meetings in the form of sort of short lectures, where afterward there would be lots of time for conversation and for discussion, and that you sort of are able to discuss problems you face or successes, whatever you like, where you would like to have some international feedback. And so we had a number of very interesting lectures and discussions over different things, some over sensors, some over visualization, some over very different topics. I try to record as many of them as possible so that you can view them on a YouTube channel. If you're interested in certain subjects, we had, for example, a focus on schools, things like that. So it is an open group, so anybody who is interested can enter the group, whether you're a citizen scientist or whether you're from academia or anything else. It is open to everybody. So the number of topics is the type of topic is changing a little bit from lecture to lecture.
Right. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it just gives me a little background. So
yeah, I guess it's a good idea, because sometimes people enter this meeting and are also wondering who are we. So it's perhaps good to explain that every time.
And it's really useful to know what sort of things you're trying to do as a group. but I think once Jonas and I have given our presentation in terms of what we're trying to do with this new initiative, then you might be able to talk to us about how that might, whether that might actually take some of your ideas further, or whether you can think you might be able to contribute to what we're trying to achieve. So if it's okay with you, shall I just launch into my little presentation, and then I'll hand over to Jonas? Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Just take the floor, please.
Okay, how do I share the screen? Oh, I've got it here. Can I just share the screen from you?
I think so.
Yeah, let's see if I can. Okay. Don't know if this works. Not sure. Are you seeing my presentation?
You should just
Okay,
put it
let's
in
see if I can get
presentation
up
mode.
full screen then. Okay, so we it's gone to the okay. This is the Citizen Science Global Partnership in conjunction with the University of Antwerp. And we've just started, only in the last few weeks, a global collaboration to seek to scale up citizen science air quality monitoring. And the Citizen Science Global Partnership is, it's been taken about 3 years to get this together. And it's been created because the existing citizen science associations felt that they wanted a global overarching organization, and not to control them, but to do different things that individual associations can't do. And the United Nations were very encouraging of us to have one body that could speak very clearly to them. And so it was founded, the Global Partnership was actually launched as a legal entity in October last year. So we're just about a year old. And we've got, at the moment, the 6 citizen science associations that are the regional. We've got the regional ones like the European Citizen Science Association, but we've also got CitizenWise Africa and the US Citizen Science Association, CitizenWise Asia, and RECAP, which is South America and the Iberian Peninsula. And our key activities are to do with advocacy for citizen science as a key contributor to the SDGs and open science. And that we, at a global level, we're promoting citizen science as a multiplying force for change. And the way that we're going to go about that is through collaborations and diverse partnerships, and to work with the global agencies to try and create global opportunities to see what we can do with citizen science. And obviously we are a network of networks, and that's what we hope to build on, that we should try and be a harmonized movement for citizen science associations and practitioners. And one of the things that we intend to do is to encourage and support global communities of practice and working groups. And at the moment, we have 2 communities of practice. One is the Citizen Science and Open Science community of practice, and the other one is the Mosquito Alert group, which is pretty much like the air quality group in that it was established by people who were running mosquito projects in different parts of the world. And it came together quite a few years ago now, I think 5 years ago, to do the same thing, to come together and to work together. And one of the things that we would tend to do is through our work is to try and support less well-developed regions and less well-resourced regions. So that's the main kind of thing. And we've, oh dear, come here, what's it doing? We've agreed a few key things that we want to do. Global scaling up and harmonizing of citizen science initiatives so that we can make more powerful contributions to the SDGs. We want to create more equity in science by supporting projects and citizen science associations. And those will be emerging citizen science associations as well. And capacity building through networking and focusing on sharing, translating resources and methodologies and not reinventing the wheel. And we want to promote citizen science in the implementation of the Open Science Recommendation globally. And obviously we're working to ensure good data governance and establishing shared data infrastructures and repositories, all of which things are important for this initiative. And why should we choose scaling up air quality monitoring if we can? And you know all the reasons why, I think, because you're all practitioners, because it's one of the most serious problems, because it's getting worse, but also for citizen science, if you actually want to get lots of people involved, you have to hit the sweet spot of self-interest and something that people think is important enough, place-based science in their own place. Those are the things that actually ensure long-term engagement by lots of people. And already air quality monitoring, there's lots of good work done by many people in many countries. So there's a lot of different experiences out there. And quite a few projects have actually demonstrated leverage for improvement in situations. Improved technology means that now we should be able to offer more opportunity for lots and lots of low-cost sensors and data sharing. And the last two things are to do with the United Nations recognition of in the things it's saying about the Agenda 2030, is it recognizes that unless it gets community engagement on big issues, it's never going to achieve the SDGs. And also now they're saying they want to flip the science model to scale up data collection and evidence for change. I'm sorry, these slides are really boring, but there's hopefully the content is interesting to you. So we're going to co-create what it is that the initiative will be doing, but there's a basic few overarching aims that we're looking for. And we're using the mosquito alert model as a model for this, that we hope when we get together and we look at what people are doing, we can agree a small range of methodologies and different ways of doing things and sensors and data structures, which have the potential to be scaled up across multiple regions. And then from that, we'll create pilot projects for testing in a different range of scenarios, and then seek funding for large-scale projects. And obviously the data harmonization is really important for this, because if we can create much larger and more valuable data sets, then the statistics offices and the UN will be able to use them more in terms of evidence for SDGs. And we want to share resources and seek support for less well-resourced regions to help to, as we said earlier, to build equity into scientific research and open science to all societies. And if we can do that, if we can prove the scaling up and harmonizing of citizen science research can make a significant global impact, then we can do more projects on with more subjects. And we sent out an invitation to, through the citizen science associations and through our networks, for people to join this initiative. And these are just some of the countries that we've actually had responses from. So you can see that already we've got responses from a really big range of countries. And some of the people, what's interesting is some of the people haven't done anything at all, but they know they want to. So there are some people who haven't chosen the methodologies that they want to work with, which is great, because it means if we can do this, then we can offer them methodologies rather than them creating new ones. Some of them have wonderful experience in large scale and different sorts of different approaches. So there's some really interesting information that's just come through from the getting people to register. So that's as far as we've got so far. And we've set up the first meeting for the 12th of September. So that's going to be when we've got over 40 people who've registered so far. And that's where we've got to at this point in time. So I hope that gives you an idea of where we are and where we're beginning to come from. It's nice to see Sarah here. Hi, Sarah. Long time no see. So yes, that's where we are, and that's our starting point, if you like. But I'd like to ask Jonas to talk about some of the more technical aspects, because I'm not a scientist. I'm a project manager and a facilitator. So all the expertise in air quality monitoring is with other people. And Jonas can talk about that.
I wonder, okay, you should be seeing my presentation. Thanks, Libby. Yeah, so I will bring my side of more or less the same story and where I'm coming from. So my name is Jonas Lembrechts. I'm from the University of Antwerp, and also from a small spin-off, CitizenWise, where we are thinking about large-scale citizen science. So that's why we teamed up with Libby, because that's also what the Global Citizen Science Initiative is interested in. And we have been doing some of that in the Curieuzeneuzen projects. Curieuzeneuzen, it's very hard to translate from Dutch. But so the main goal of that is to do citizen science at a large scale, at a scale in which the whole of society is interacting with it, so that we can basically change the compass of society as a whole on environmental challenges, or very concrete, how to give relevant scientific information about environmental issues to, let's say, a taxi driver, that the society as a whole gets better information on these kind of issues. We've had 3 citizen science projects on air quality for now, all in Belgium. First one in Antwerp, 2,000 participants. Then the second one in Flanders, the whole region of Flanders, with 20,000. And then one in Brussels. This is a different map, different scale, with 3,000 participants, 3,000 locations. So this is really getting lots of people involved, getting lots of measurement locations, and covering the whole area. And the main goal of these projects is 2 sides. So we have the citizen side, the soft side, provide information, go very close to people, to society, raise awareness about issues. But on the other side, the hard side also.
Ik heb hem geen half uur, hè? Nog een kwartier.
Oh, there is this kid telling me I have only 50 minutes left in Dutch. So it's someone with a Dutch-speaking kid who might want to mute. So we have the hard side, data collection, so lots of data, and then scientific publications, improving our scientific knowledge, of course. So traditionally, air quality, I don't have to tell you this, has been done a lot this way. Have some reference stations. Flanders has around 60 of those. Input meteo data, traffic data into computer models, and then create these model estimates of air quality. But what we still need to do is to see how accurate these are, and that's what Curieuzeneuzen has been trying to do. So we've not used the satellites, not used the reference stations for that, but turned our attention to the citizens. And this project, it had to be broad and big, and that's also what we're thinking now for this global project. If you want a powerful data set to validate these maps, you need lots of points. But also, if you want to create large-scale awareness, if you want people at the hairdressers to talk about air quality, you also need this to be broad and big. So that's what Curieuzeneuzen stands for. Because, in theory, your project size influences your societal impact, but there is a certain point where you go over a certain critical threshold and there is amplification of your societal impact. Once you have sufficient participants, the society as a whole feels it's involved. People talk to other people, people see things happening, the media is picking up on it. So then you go up a significant notch in societal impact. You go onto national news, for example. So that's what we wanted to get over that critical threshold to get the whole of society involved. So how to get people to do that? For an important thing was how to measure. And we thought, okay, if you want lots of people to measure, we need things to be simple, as easy as possible. So we did not go for this kind of smart kit that looks very fancy, which would in theory need this like tech whiz participants to set things up, which would exclude all the people who have no idea about technology. So instead we went for the very easy, low cost, simplest method of them all. Just put up these diffusion tubes, these passive sampler tubes, attach this thing to your window, also very visible, so creating awareness in the neighborhood. Just people had to hang this up, leave it there for a month, and then send it back. Of course, to convince them to do that, we needed a big media campaign all the way up to the buses. But in the end, it was surprisingly easy to get people involved, because people really, if you send the right message, in our case, it was really just as simple as saying, we're doing the largest ever project on air quality. Do you want to help us? And then, everyone wants to help. So we got this kind of map. This is for the 20,000 measurement points across Flanders. So these are all measured NO2 concentrations from these passive samplers. This kind of data has scientific value. So it's not just for the citizens, it's also for science. For example, we picked up on hidden street canyons, so streets where the air quality was very bad, which were not picked up in the computer models because they didn't have that high resolution. We also could have quantify the amount of places where we went above the air quality limit from the World Health Organization, which was very surprisingly few people. So that was pretty good news, but still across Flanders, 150,000 inhabitants, which is still a very important number. From the Brussels case study, we got some other interesting information. A very strong correlation with income, a negative correlation, so much worse air quality in lower income neighborhoods. And interestingly, so neighborhoods where people own less cars and contribute less to air pollution, that's where the air quality was actually worse. So there is this social inequality that came out here, thanks also to this large scale, because we could involve, we also put in lots of effort to involve those lower income neighborhoods, etc., by having this very simple approach. Thanks to this momentum generated by having this so large scale, this was translated into policy. For example, in Brussels, there is now a new mobility plan that integrates the results. Action groups can work with these numbers. And then on the science side, of course, we can validate these models and get a better understanding of what air quality does to our society. So that's a very general overview of the Curieuzeneuzen approach. First, try it on air quality. You can also apply this to any other environmental issue. We have applied it here to extreme weather events. This is Curieuzeneuzen in the garden, where we installed temperature and moisture sensors in gardens to quantify, for example, urban heat island effects and what people can do to reduce extreme weather. We're now also applying it to sound with smart sound sensors that are picking up, and also with questionnaires where we try to get high spatial resolution information on where sound is an issue. So this concept of large-scale citizen science is very useful for any environmental issue, in a way. In this project, we're also looking at impact on sleep quality, for example. So that's all. I'm saying large scale, very big, but of course, all of that was just Flanders, and the issue of these environmental issues are much bigger than that. So that's where we start looking at the globe. And this is mostly summarizing what Libby already said. So, okay, environmental issues at global scale, air quality is going to be the easiest to tackle because so many people are already measuring it. The interest in it is very large. The community, the society cares a lot about it. And when looking at this upscaling globally, we want to keep the strengths of Curieuzeneuzen, so that large scale, that spatial coverage and momentum, so get people to talk about it. We want things to be as easy and cheap as possible. Currently thinking about using these diffusion tubes that I showed, but also having smart sensors, real-time monitoring to have also the temporal component, considering a hierarchical approach where you can get in at the easiest and cheapest level with just diffusion tubes and then scale up hierarchically at more complex measurements, more complex levels to your hierarchy once things are picking up. So that's very important. Also because we want to have all these lower income parts of society to also be involved, and as Libby said, also have these areas of the globe where funding for these kind of things is very hard to get. We want to keep that good communication with citizens, so do citizen science and communicate what we find to the participants and society as a whole, but also be scientifically robust, so that, for example, as I showed, models can be validated using the citizen science data. So really keep track of accuracy of the measurements, which is easier to do for air quality than for some of the other issues at hand. But now, of course, when we go global, Curieuzeneuzen is just one example. Flanders is just one region. So the goal is to team up with everyone working on air quality, as Libby explained, bring them all in the room, get that knowledge and expertise together, and have a bottom-up approach to come up with the best methodology, the best solutions for scaling up to the global scale. And then if that works, in theory, we can expand to these other environmental issues, include impact measures, etc. Of course, that's setting up new things. We can also just bring together everything that's there. That's the alternative route. Homogenizing data, something we're also thinking about. We've been doing this for microclimate data in the soil temp project. This is a map of that, but we would like to do something similar for citizen science air quality data. So create that global database, homogenize data to allow answering questions at a much larger scale. Okay. There is already a question. Yeah, so as Libby said, this is all very fresh. So Curieuzeneuzen, of course, has been going on, but this idea of scaling up is very fresh. So we're really looking at you for input, this group, and then the other people we brought together. So we're, anything you can add now or later is very much welcome, because we want to, make this a joint exercise. So maybe Jean-Paul.
Well, yes. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting graphics of the results and citizens' participation. What I'm wondering is, have you noticed at all any change of mentality of the citizens or the people involved? Have they been changing from automotive to bicycles, or doing things in their lives and their lifestyle simply because of participation?
That's a very good question. So we've teamed up with some social scientists who have done extensive surveys at the societal level. And I think the outcome was that, yes, people are caring more about this. I briefly mentioned, okay, maybe house prices might be affected by this. And it looks like people are indeed checking now where they're gonna live, if the air quality is bad there or not. So really keeping that in mind when they choose housing locations. And in Brussels, for example, so the Brussels measurement campaign was later than the one in Antwerp and Flanders. And there we saw that air quality was actually overall surprisingly better than thought, because both policy and people have been implementing changes. So Brussels is doing better than always feared. We've always been saying Brussels is this dirty capital of Belgium, but things are getting better because governments and people have been acting on this. Amongst us, we don't want to get all the credit for that with Curieuzeneuzen, of course, but we see that this has become a bit of talk at the hairdressers, in the taxi. So people are much more aware that it's important, and once people are aware, even unconsciously, decisions are going to be made in the right
that was
direction.
Brussels. And how about Antwerp? That's where you started with.
Yes, so we haven't measured again yet, so we don't know if air quality got better, but the same principles of that awareness is much bigger, that people are at least thinking about it. I can't really say how much they're actually doing it taking the bike instead of the car, I would have to talk to our social scientists.
Okay, and policy makers?
What do you say?
And policy makers of Antwerp? Are they
Yes, so
involved?
policy also, we have had now this low emission zone in Antwerp where diesel cars cannot go in anymore. Of course, this is also a societal change that's ongoing without Curieuzeneuzen, but I think we can claim that we accelerated this and that we put some fire to
I'd like to mention one of our respondents, somebody who signed up to work with us, a lady called Anna. I can't remember her second name, but she started working in Padua. I think it was Padua, an Italian city. And she said now that other Italian cities are coming to them and saying, can we have your project in our city? Because we want to be able to see where we should be changing policy, changing the cars, changing the regulations. So certainly in other places, they are using this citizen-generated data to do that. So things that, actually it is making a difference in that sense.
I think Sarah has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, so you might answer this. I'm hoping to come to the meeting on the 12th to Libby and Jonas. Thank you. But are you thinking of indoor air quality as well as outdoor air quality? Would be my first question.
For now, it's outdoor.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. Libby, you're muted.
We have to keep it a bit simple, and it's surprising how many different approaches we've already found from the people who've responded. In the 40 people who've responded, there's quite a lot of different things that are being measured.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of other, so we have to sift through that.
Yeah.
We have to work that one out and see.
Because I think my steer would be that I think it would be a shame not to include indoor air quality, and that's because you have such flux between the indoor and the outdoor, and obviously people spend 80% of their time indoors, and so from a kind of human health perspective, it would be unfortunate not to include the time that people are spending indoors.
It was your project. It was the 2000 schools.
Yeah, that's indoor.
Was that indoor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started off as it was a spin out project from a CO2 monitoring as a proxy for ventilation during COVID. And Akim's on the call actually. It's Akim's monitors that we're using the air gradients in that project. But they also have air gradient do outdoor sensors too. And we're hoping to extend the project to include outdoor, but primarily it was an indoor air quality project. So I think that it would be really interesting to include those. And then my other question was around schools, because I'm doing schools air quality monitoring at the moment, as well as one in homes in the UK. But are you thinking that this kind of upscaling, is this including schools, excluding schools, or not sure yet?
I think there are 2 people who responded who are working with the GLOBE program, and that's very much targeted at schools. So we've already got,
Brilliant.
you've already got a slight cluster there that they've got that focus. I mean, we haven't gone into it yet because we've only just got the responses, but I think that will definitely be the case. I think working with GLOBE is an obvious one because it's across so many countries.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they are slightly, so I know that GLOBE in the UK, nobody's really coordinating that at the moment, which is a real shame. But perhaps something like this, some sort of like global initiative might help rekindle that a little bit.
Well, we've got Mark Kirchner, who's going to do a presentation just after the next Global Partnership board meeting on the 6th. And Mark Kirchner is leading citizen science in NASA, and NASA are the main funders for GLOBE. So that's something that we could perhaps ask him then. because they are moving into a new era in terms of what they're doing. So it could be very interesting to get them involved.
Yeah, so what I can add, I think schools are awesome because your impact multiplies massively, your outreach impact, because you reach a lot of people at the same time. So I'm always in favor of prioritizing schools. Secondly, yeah, so we're leaning towards getting like 5 methodologies out of all those that are happening in the world, like the 5 main things, and that people can still choose out of those. So that could include an indoor component, for example, as one of those 5, because it's going to be impossible to distill everything down to one approach. So I showed these passive diffusion tubes, but also there is a question in the chat like, why always traffic? Well, passive diffusion tubes are cheap and easy, but NO2 is just linked to traffic. So you have to limit such a project to traffic. So of course, if we go global with this, we want to also look at other approaches and monitor other sources of air quality pollution. So yeah, we'll have to go beyond these diffusion tubes to capture those, because those are limited to NO2. So yeah, that's what.
I mean, this year we've had so many wildfires and bushfires that's also a really serious problem. I'm not sure whether anybody's actually doing work on that kind of air quality monitoring. You know, Jonas, do you know if anybody's doing anything on that from your climate crisis, weather crisis things?
Yeah, there's definitely in Canada. I've seen something in Canada happening, but yeah, I don't know exact names.
We don't know everything by any means, but it is something obviously that's getting worse, and so we need to look at that. We'll see.
Yeah. So I'm envisaging some kind of decision tree where you say, okay, these are my main issues in my area, and then you come up to this approved measurement approach, or something like that. Could be more than 5. Yeah.
We shall see.
So Paul, your hand is still raised. Is it just you want to say more things, or you're just...
Well, there's plenty to discuss, but no, I'll take it away. Leave some opportunity to others.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Achim?
Yeah, Sarah just mentioned me. So maybe just quickly introducing myself. So we are based in Thailand. I'm from Germany, and we do low-cost air quality monitoring. Libby, we had a quick interaction here. And we started actually with wildfire monitoring. That's how we actually came into existence, and with dealing schools in Thailand that were heavily impacted by hazardous air pollution. And now we are actually working globally with a lot of partners. And that's really interesting to see, because we have some really clean countries like the UK, for example, that the focus is much more on NO2 and maybe on indoor air quality and CO2 issues. Whereas in Asia, it's much more PM focused, and also things like CO because of incomplete combustion engines, ozone in some countries. So what we actually see, you could probably draw a word map and say, okay, they are more concerned on ozone, they are more concerned on NOx, they are more concerned on PM. But in the end, everything impacts your health. So I think there's a common base layer on bringing all these things together. Yeah, that's. I'm really happy to work in this group, and
excellent.
A lot of stuff we can do. Yeah.
No,
yeah, these
you.
are very good talks. Thanks.
Okay. Sarah?
Thank you. So just another thought. Are people in touch with OpenAQ?
I'm in touch.
As I say, what's that?
Like, so I can say a few things because we just went into a partnership with OpenAQ. So they are a global repository of air quality data. They include a lot of sensors, reference stations, as well as low-cost sensor networks. And they basically provide the data then in an API form that people can download. So by default, we are sharing our outdoor data with them. And yeah, and I think that's what's actually also coming to my mind if we think about a global approach and collecting data, it's definitely somebody we should talk to, and I could make a connection there.
If you could, that would be very useful. But can I ask other people what other data repositories are being used for your projects? Where is your data going?
Achim is...
No, I was just kind of playing around with the raising hand, sorry.
Okay, I can tell you a little bit, Libby, because my computer stopped working, so I've been out a little bit. But I can tell you a little bit about what we are working with a lot is Sensor Community, sensor.community. They are working globally. They have a very nice, yeah, indeed, not reinventing the wheel. So we are also not reinventing the wheel. So in the Netherlands, we collect their data. We also tell people in the Netherlands, if they want to do air quality measurements, why not use their method? So the kind of is an API from their side, so you can use the data. Also, we have an API, so you can get the data from the Netherlands, which is more than just sensor communities, also other projects. And this data is there. Yeah, it's pretty open. We have different types of data. We even have NO2 tube data on it. But it is, and I know they are doing the same in Flanders, similar things, Samen voor zuivere lucht. They also have a data platform for Flanders with, and the nice thing about that is I'm working in a National Institute for Air Quality in Flanders, also the Flemish Environmental Agency. We are combining the sensor data with the official data, which gives added value because you can say something about the quality of the data.
I was going to say that's a really key issue because we've talking to the UN and they've given us the World Environment Situation Room landing page for citizen science. But they want data quality standards on there, and anything that we can show them where the data is being used by the official national statistics offices or people like that, your kind of thing is extremely valuable as an example. So I'd be really interested to see that and to see what data, you know, what kind of quality management goes on around that. That's something in the project that we're going to have to deal with quite a lot.
Yes, so I think that is really one of the challenges, because if you want to upscale air quality measurements, just citizen science measurements, there has to be a benefit in it, right? There's no reason for me, if I'm living in a small town, I'm interested in the air quality in my neighborhood. Why would I be interested in upscaling? That is only interesting if it has some added benefits. For example, my data gets used by policymakers. So one of the things we do is we tell people if they join our platform, it's called Measure Together, then they get a correction on the data and a comparison to the official data, which is very, very attractive for people. So it's one of the reasons why people join us. So if you can do that on a global scale, if you can say, hey, this data really gets used for the Sustainable Development Goals, and you can, then people's measurements are having impact, and it will be attractive for them to follow the protocols. But if you're just making protocols and telling people what to do, and there is no added benefit, they will just, they will smile at you and say, yeah, but I'm going to do it my own way. Mm-hmm. Right? So is that something you already considered, or?
Well, yes, I mean, it's one of the overarching things that the Global Partnership wants to do, is to create the data, or bring the data together so that it becomes acceptable to the people who are judging it, to the national statistics offices who are making the reports for the SDGs. And there's been the biggest barrier that we've seen. They don't want it. They you know what it's like. You've been there. They're really not interested in it. So if we can make sure that the way that this is created, that the data quality gathering is good enough, that we can prove its scientific acceptability, then we can take it to them and we can say that. And one of the reasons the Curieuzeneuzen project is so good is that they got when they looked at their data, it was 98% really good quality scientific data. So it's really robust. And that's what we need to be able to do when we bring things together. The data side of things is a kind of another issue, but it's one of the most important issues that there is, that we need to get a group of people who are interested in working on that side of it, while other people are working on the other side of it, the actual, the projects and the methodologies.
It's, yeah.
Didn't see you putting a hand out there.
No, it's just, the NO2 tubes have this really great benefit. They are an accepted method. Mm-hmm. They are called indicative measurements. And if you do those measurements, they will be accepted as an official measurement. Mm-hmm. And it is very low tech. So it's in principle very easy to do. But in practice, there's not many citizen science projects by really citizens, including NO2 tubes, because it involves ordering tubes and then sending them back and having them analyzed. So it's also the Curieuzeneuzen project was brilliant, but I have seen nobody replicating it, right? Mm-hmm. It was a one-off thing. It was brilliant, but I would have liked to do something similar in the Netherlands, but we never pulled it off. So perhaps NO2 tubes can be beneficial, can be used, but I see a lot of problems. It's not so easy. And if you do the sensors, they are pretty awesome. They are pretty good. But the data quality is not going to be good enough for the official standards. So you need the official institutions to work with us to make something acceptable out of it. We are not going to make these sensors so good that they are acceptable if you use the standards that are now used by the official institutes. Mm-hmm. If you understand what I mean. So we need, they need to bring the standards down. So I see Jonas trembling with interest to say something. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, so I very much agree with you. So I've talked with people from sensor community, and what's super nice there is that you can grow it bottom up. You can do it with one sensor and start with that, and then it has grown into this global community, which is super awesome. And Curieuzeneuzen, indeed, you need to start with a lot of sensors at the same time. So you need the sufficient funding to pull such a thing off. But yeah, I I'm very happy that you talk also about this. Yeah, the standards. I didn't know too much about that yet. So, yeah, we have to look into that we can end up with the methodology that's either standardized or can be calibrated, as you've been working on in the Netherlands, I think.
We have been working on a calibration and a upgrading of these measurements data, but even we are not yet able to have these data accepted as indicative measurements, right? So that would be a major step. If these sensor data would be so good that they would be accepted as official indicative measurements, then they would have the same status as the NO2 tubes, and then you could reach out to policymakers and say you really have to accept this data. But this is not yet the case.
The video that this lady called Anna sent us, her presentation was part of I think it's a European air quality thing. There was a conference, and the guy from the official thing was saying that it has to be. They're really proud because they got 4,000 census stations around Europe, and they thought that was a lot. They thought that was really good, and that would give them lots of good data. And to me, 4,000 stations across Europe is, but he said this is the gold standard, nothing else is good enough, and this is what we're working with. So, but the lady who was doing the presentation in the middle about the citizen science stuff was saying that the city policymakers, the mayors from the different cities, were coming and asking them to do the work because they knew that it was important and it was delivering information they needed to be able to put in new traffic regulations in the city. You know, they were looking at Milan and Naples. I can't remember which cities they were, but it's a really interesting video, the whole thing, to see what we're up against in terms of the people who are there and with the expensive data sensors. It's like in Flanders, they had 160 data points, the collection points, and it didn't show them anything like what they needed when they got all the people involved in collecting. So we have to work on it, but some people are already saying that we would rather have this data because there's more data points than we would have these other ones. So we maybe haven't got to the official people yet in Europe, but then in other places they won't have the same kind of hierarchy of control that you have here. You know, if you're talking about Africa, for instance, it may not be the same. Although the World Health Organization would like it to be.
Maybe I have a few thoughts there. So we currently running a co-location test. I mean, our monitor is open hardware, open source on 4 continents with more than 20 partners. And what we see is very, 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 very different. Like when it comes to versus low cost, very, very different levels of acceptance. So for example, the US EPA started really engaging very actively with low cost monitors and putting them into their network. And then there are other countries, especially in Asia, for example, that don't accept them at all. No?
Yeah.
And what I think is maybe a potential way forward is that you kind of mix in the low cost monitors within the reference grade and make a denser network, and then combine them in your cloud software to basically verify the low cost monitors through the reference stations. And there are some interesting applications, like for example in Canada, British Columbia, you click on a low cost monitor and it looks up the closest reference stations and then shows you the correlation between that low cost monitor and the reference stations. Then there are other approaches that you can actually find out the background PM levels if you have enough sensors and compare that to the reference. So, and what's maybe a challenge there is that often these citizen science projects, they grow naturally, no? But on the other hand, you might want to have a kind of top-down approach and say, we need sensors here and here and here from a more strategic point of view. Maybe because there are reference stations, or you want to kind of co-locate and test, or maybe, well, whatsoever. I think that's a certain challenge to deal with. Yeah, lots of thoughts. Sorry, I just want to.
That's lovely. I think that's, and I'd love the references to that if you've got it. But that's really what Hester was saying, is that you're doing that. You've got the citizen science data and the official data, and you're mixing them now. You're putting them together so you can compare them, aren't you? I mean, this is exactly what we need to do. It's never all going to happen overnight, but if we can demonstrate some things work and put things together, then we can make some changes, I think. So I'd love those references to the Canadian and British Columbian ones, if you could possibly send them to me or share them.
I can send it over, yeah. I need to look them up and then I send you.
Thank you. No, that would be great. Thank you very much.
That's, some people are already leaving because the hour is over. So maybe we should start closing up here, even though the discussion is very interesting. But Libby, perhaps, or Jonas, perhaps I can give you the last word and you can tell us what you would like us to do or how to keep contact or...
Yeah, so at least fill out that survey that I put in the chat. It has now been swamped by other interesting information. But that way, yeah, when you get into the loop of this thought exercise, that would be super nice. Also forwarded this survey to anyone else that's working on air quality citizen science. So we get, a very good overview of everyone. And then, join us in the next meetings that we will organize. Provide us your viewpoints and ideas on how you would think things should move forward at the global scale. That's my viewpoint. Libby.
That's perfect. I would agree with that, and would love to hear have your examples of what you're doing and where the challenges are and where you've seen things that make a difference. That would be super. Thank you very much for inviting us to come and talk to you.
Yeah, this was lovely and super nice meeting you and all your expertise.
Yeah, so hope to work with you in future.
Yeah, let's do that. And thank you very much for the nice presentation and the nice discussion, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.